The best way to predict the future is to create it. You, as all the people in your communities leading grower groups, have a responsibility to ensure that your future for your families, for your businesses, for your communities, and for greater Australia is a bright one. This, I believe, takes good leadership and collaboration. In fact, without good leadership, you can't actually have collaboration. And I believe that both of those qualities are absolutely paramount if we're going to have a good, bright future in agriculture. Before I go any further, I wanted to thank Rebecca Wallace for inviting me here and the Grower Group Alliance. And what a fantastic show. I think that it's a credit to agriculture to get so many people in one room wanting to learn, wanting to do better, wanting to work together. I think that's an absolute testament to the industry that we all work in. Although we work in different facets of agriculture, the fact that we're all here representing food production, fibre production, if there's anyone from wine production, I could potentially meet with you. I'm not really sure if there's anyone in the room, but we're all basically in the production industry, and I think that that's a fantastic thing. In the spirit of collaboration, I would also like to acknowledge the Northern Beef Futures Program and Rangelands NRM. So without those two programs, the Kimberley-Pilbara Cattlemen's Association actually wouldn't be in existence. Today, I've been asked to share with you a couple of stories on leadership and collaboration and how I believe that you all together can create a more dynamic and vibrant community using these two actions. So a little bit of a quick introduction on the Kimberley-Pilbara Cattlemen's Association. Sorry, before I do that, is agriculture important? Yeah, I reckon it is. So, I believe that we need a vibrant rural sector. Agriculture is responsible for simple things that everyone in everyday life takes for granted. So without agriculture, who cares for the country? Who looks after the animals? Who ensures that Australian families have got the safest and healthiest food on the planet? Who cares for the waterways which ultimately run into cities which people swim and enjoy on their social occasions? It's all to do with farming. Deloitte's report, Catching the Next Wave, has recently come out and it spoke of the next wave of economic development in Australia. And mining, that's old news. It may have been important in the past, but we're in a changing dynamic. We need to actually keep up with that. So the 5 big things that are taking Australia into the next wave of economic development are gas, tourism, international education, wealth management, and agribusiness, which is a little bit exciting. So we currently produce 13% of Australia's GDP and we indirectly employ 307,000 people. So is agriculture important? I would say without a shadow of a doubt. I actually read a report, and I don't remember where it is, but it said that Australia's agribusiness sector would, in the next couple of years, contribute $60 billion to our economy. Now that is something to be proud of. So a little bit about the KPCA. The KPCA is a very baby organisation. So we were established in April 2015. And nothing really too much happened until I was brought on. I was lucky enough to be brought on September 29th last year. So we're a really, really young organisation, and I'm really thrilled to be here to actually ask and learn from all of you with your experiences, what your challenges have been, what your opportunities have been, what your experiences have been that have led you to where you are. We currently represent about 180,000 head of cattle, and we have lots to learn. I've already gained an awful lot from joining the GGA, like Grain Grower Group Alliance. God, I nearly said Grain Growers Alliance. That's a bit of a faux pas coming from the beef industry. But it's really wonderful to have that backing, to be able to understand what other groups are doing from a corporate governance point of view, what are they doing from a legals point of view, what are they charging for membership, all of those things that as a baby organisation we're still learning, we're still grappling with. And it's really wonderful to be a part of an organisation that's actually bigger than us, but trying to do the same things that we are. So the Kimberley-Pilbara Cattlemen's Association have 5 key strategies that we're working towards. 1 is promoting the industry. 2 is bringing in not only relevant R&D, but also extension and adoption. So there's an awful lot of research that has been done. I think there's an area that we need to take advantage of, which is actually using that R&D to get relevant uptake on the ground where it's actually going to make a difference. Bringing in innovative supply chains, so looking at the commercial model that we've had and try and take us from a space of being price takers to price makers and having a little bit more control of the beef product that we grow further down the supply chain. Development of leadership programs, that's obviously been a passion of mine, and it's something that we're working towards. So if anyone's keen on coming on board with a leadership program, I've built one and I need some support. And the fifth strategy that we're working on is collaboration. It's actually that word. So collaborating with other groups to help us achieve all of the other 4 strategies that we've got. We can't do it on our own. So let's first talk about collaboration. It's the action of working with someone to produce something. Now, I wasn't lucky enough to be in the room yesterday when we were discussing things, but something that I've learned is that sadly I only have one head. I'm not from Tassie, no, just joking. Is there any Tasmanians in the room? Go on, put your hand up. I'm just joking. Anyway, but with my one head, I think in a particular way. I have particular experiences. I have a particular level of education, and that is limiting. If I can collaborate with other groups, with other people, with consultants, with agriculture departments, I am going to not only have access to a whole heap more information, I understand and learn about different grants, about different events, but I can also share resources with other organisations. So not only do I potentially have skills and contacts that I can share, but I can also get those from you, so that ultimately we're actually together benefiting the very people that we're here representing and the reason that we exist. And I think that as grower groups is something that we have to keep in the top of our mind, is that it's actually not about keeping us employed. It's about the people that we represent on the paddock, because if we lose sight of that, we actually lose relevance and then we die as an organisation. I mean, we're all heading that way, but as an organisation. Sorry. So if I'm collaborating, it helps me better serve the people that I'm here for. Collaboration actually taps into your unconscious incompetence. So what I mean by that is that you don't actually know what you don't know until you're talking to someone who does know what you don't know and is able to share that. You can then relate that knowledge to your own situation and provide better services, deliver better outcomes for the people that you represent. And it's a pretty scary space to be in, but it's also really, really rewarding. I found being in that space also makes you drop your ego, because believe it or not, with my little one head, there are people that actually know more than me. There are people that have different experiences, and heavens above, they may actually have a better idea than me. So if I'm able to utilise that, drop my ego, acknowledge the fact that people have different skills, different experiences, different knowledge to share, different talents to bring, then together we're going to be much, much, much better off. Annabelle Coppin's a good mate of mine, and I'm not sure if any of you are aware of her. She's a pastoralist up in the northern beef industry. And her and I, for the last 10 years, sitting on the back of a horse in a cattle paddock, mustering, we're talking about how can we get more collaboration to the industry. You know, back then people were saying, oh, let's collaborate. But how do you actually do collaboration? Like, what is it? How do you do it? We're such a small population, we need to do it, but what does it actually look like? There are so many groups that we have up in the northern part of Australia. So in the Pilbara, for example, we've got the Pilbara Regional Biosecurity Group, the Pilbara Mesquite Management Group, we've got Rangelands NRM, we've got the De Grey LCDC, we've now got the Kimberley Pilbara Cattlemen's Association, we've got DAFWA, DPAW, we've got a whole heap of people all working within the landscape, competing for grants, competing for events, trying to get producers to our events, trying to stay relevant. And so we sort of thought, well, hang on, how can we actually pull this together? So last week, we actually organised a phone hookup, and it went for 2 hours. And the way that phone hookup was structured is we had every different organisation that was on that hookup had 5 minutes to talk about what their key strategies were, what the outcomes were that they were trying to achieve, what some of their challenges were, their opportunities were. We then spent time talking about what grants are available, how can we actually join together and do that, and what events we had coming up, what concepts were we trying to nut out. At the end of that conversation, somebody said, okay, cool, so what now? And me, I was so excited because I now had knowledge of other groups that were actually trying to do the exact same thing that I was. And in order to, pull off benefits for our producers, we need to work together. So I got off that phone hookup and I phoned 3 different people, because in the Kimberley-Pilbara region, we're trying to run fire management workshops, so better managing our landscapes through fire. Wildfire is a big problem up there. After getting off the phone to those 3 people, we're officially whistling Dixie, because we've now got a fire management program one day in the Kimberley and one day in the Pilbara. Now that is, instead of 4 separate events, trying to pull all these scrappy little bits together to create some sort of an event, we're now going to have 2 bang-up events in the Kimberley and Pilbara that are really well resourced, that will be really well attended by pastoralists, they'll be really well promoted, and together we're actually delivering benefit to the pastoralists, which is what we're actually there for in the first place. Now, is this model, is me actually collaborating with these other people, is that going to get the KPCA money? No. Not in the first instance. Are we going to create an event that is actually worth people coming to? Yes. Are we actually going to be making a difference to our stakeholders, the people that we represent? Yes. Are we going to be more effective with our promotion, that sort of thing? Are we then, as a result, going to get more members, more partnerships? Yes. Are these organisations going to help us out? Do these organisations that we're working with potentially have grants coming up? Yes. So ultimately, is the KPCA going to benefit? Da-na-na-na. Yes, of course we are. So we have to have a long-term strategic vision rather than constantly trying to fall into this trap of money grabbing for now. Collaboration in this instance, what we're doing is, because KPCA is new, we don't have an awful lot of money, but the companies that we're working with do have money. So the companies had money, we had resources, we had people, we had knowledge, and we had capacity to access stations that we know are going to deliver a good workshop. So we recognised what our needs were, what resources we all had, and then you put it together and ultimately come up with a much better outcome. As an idea, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could put together, maybe twice a year, 2 or 3 hours on the phone where all of us got on, and it was facilitated by GGA, and we all got on and just shared what we were working on and what we were doing together. Then send out a list. I don't know if this is being done, by the way. Sorry if it is. KPCA is a bit behind the times, a bit new. But it would be awesome, because then we can get each other's contact details and say, hey, I heard that you were working in this supply chain thing. That's what we're doing. Who are you talking to? Can we share? Can we pool? That sort of thing. Exactly what Peter was saying then. We're currently rebuilding our website, and on our website, on the homepage, will be a calendar of events. Now, that's not just events for the KPCA. That's any industry event, any beef industry event, and any big regional event. So the Halls Creek Rodeo and Camp Draft, the Derby Rodeo and Camp Draft, the Meat and Livestock Australia's AGM, the Australian Live Export Council's AGM, any KPCA events, any Rangelands NRM events. So it's a one-stop shop. It's a small thing, but it's another way of collaborating, getting people to know what's actually happening in the region. I'm personally really looking forward to learning about what you guys do to collaborate, and I'm really excited to be listening to some of the speakers that we've got today, because we are learning. I'm thirsty for knowledge. I'm absolutely starving for where to from here, because I don't have all the answers. I've never run a grower group before. My pastoralists that are on the executive, they're awesome pastoralists. They're really dynamic operators, but we've never done this. So we're all learning, and I'm really thirsty for knowledge and thrilled to be here. So I want to talk to you now, just shift gears a little bit and talk about leadership. And I am acutely aware of the time, so I'll speed up. I guess I learned about leadership from a really young age. We had a sensational 6, a family of sensational 6, and unfortunately we lost Dad when I was young, and we turned to a fabulous 5. Now, the reason that I share that story is my first exposure to leadership was watching my mum when she had 4 kids aged 5, 6, 7 and 9, and she could have chosen to sell up the farm and walk away. But she didn't. And she showed us from a very young age what determination, courage, resilience, hard work, all of those qualities that are in a leader that are so important, we grew up with. And I feel so blessed to have had that experience. We were, as kids, most of you guys would have been, or potentially some of you anyway, will have grown up on farms. And how blessed is it to have a childhood that you did that? We learnt to push boundaries. We learnt to live with the consequences of pushing those boundaries. So that's ultimately what leadership is all about, isn't it? Leadership, by definition, is about pushing boundaries. It's about doing things differently, doing things new. If we keep doing the same thing, we're not actually leading anyone. We're just sort of joining in with the sheep. We used to, as kids, we used to make petrol bombs. And we used to douse a shearing shed brush in fuel and then put bullets in it, and then do a little thing of fuel, and then stand behind a corrugated iron sheet and light it and see what happened. Turns out they do blow up. But, we made decisions, we lived with the consequences. Did Mum thump us? Yes, absolutely she did. But we learned by pushing boundaries. So we had a lot of fun growing up as kids, and I think growing up on a farm has given me a really solid foundation for leadership, particularly with the mum that I had. I was always pushing boundaries. Actually, a funny story, I was lucky enough to go away to a rural boarding school. I don't know whether Mum sent me there for her sanity or mine, but anyway. And I was, a couple of years ago, speaking at a conference in Canberra, and I had this lady come it was almost like Moses parting the waters, and this woman came towards me. She was my Year 11 senior at school, and I was in Year 8, and she goes, "Catherine, hello." And I went, "Hi, I owe you a huge apology." And she goes, "Yeah, I nearly failed Year 11 because of you." And I was like, "Oh." And anyway, I'd just spoken, and she goes, "That was a pretty good speech, Catherine. I was pretty impressed. I actually genuinely thought you'd be in jail." So leadership is about pushing boundaries. You may give certain people the irrits, and that's actually okay, because when you're breaking new ground, there are going to be people that don't like what you're doing. As long as you have a desire to make a difference and you believe in the direction that you're going, run with it. So just on leadership, I recently was in Canberra and was sort of lying awake at 3 o'clock in the night, just, as I'm sure that you all do, thinking about things. And I was like, how am I going to present leadership? What is it about leadership? And I thought, if you've got good leadership, you can do anything, you can be anything, you can achieve anything. And then I was like, I'm a pretty smart girl, I reckon I can spell that, C-A-N. And then I thought, hang on, can actually spells 3 of my most important and valued traits in leadership. It is communication, authenticity, and networks. Because without all 3 of those, I don't believe you actually can be a leader. So let's talk about communication to start with. It's absolutely paramount in anything you do. It's paramount in getting ideas across, in solving conflict, in inspiring others, in collaboration, in managing change. You absolutely need to communicate. I first came across the power of communication when I was doing some work over in Indonesia. So I worked in Indonesia in the live export industry for about 5 years. And I had some very funny experiences where perhaps communication may have been broken down a little, perhaps. One of them, I'll just share a couple of stories because they make me laugh. I hope they make you laugh too. But anyway, I was on the back of a scooter and I was doing a breeding project at the back of a feedlot, and I needed to powder my nose. And I said to the lady, "Oh, Ibu Prima, can I please go to the bathroom?" And she said, yeah, it's about 1 kilometre away. So she says, "I'll jump on my scooter and I'll take you." I was like, "Okay, great." So I jump on the back of her scooter and she's toddling along and I'm looking at the feed bunks and checking the cattle and making sure nothing's right. She turns around to me and she goes, "Excuse me, Mr. Marriott, my motorbike is crying because you fat like 4 man." I was like, "Oh, that's a bit fabulous, thanks." That's actually rude in our country, but go your hardest. Anyway, then I had another example, and I was doing a cattle under palms project, so trying to figure out carrying capacities and whatnot under this new palm plantation. And we were sort of trying to figure out what the cattle would actually eat and what they wouldn't and whatnot. And I said to one of the, Pak Dwi, who was up in Kalimantan, he said, "Oh, Catherine, the cattle will eat this legume, but they won't eat this legume." And I'm looking at it going, "But Pak Dwi, they look the same." And he turns the leaf over and he goes, no, this one no like, hairy like your upper lip." I was like, sweet deal, I love Indonesia, I'm a fat hairy man, and if I got nothing else out of it, I'm having a win there. And then it goes the other way. So I was in a car on the way out to Juang Jaya feedlot in Lampung, and I said to the taxi driver, I taught myself Indonesian because I realised very quickly communication, that if you want to communicate or if you want to create change, you actually have to talk to the people on the ground that are doing the actual doing. You can talk to the managers who speak English, that's great, but the chances of that message actually getting to the people that are doing the doing is fairly limited. So I taught myself Indonesian. Clearly not very well. So I was in the back of this taxi and it was hot and the aircon wasn't working. I was trying to get him to open his window. And so I said to him, "Maaf Pak, saya panas, bisakah Anda dibuka celana?" Now what I thought I was saying is, "Excuse me sir, I'm hot, can you open your window?" I said it about 3 times, and by the time we got to the feedlot, this guy was pretty much on the steering wheel, trying to get as far away from me as possible. And I said to him, I got to the feedlot and I was like, "Oh, what have I said?" And they all just burst into laughter and I went, "Oh God." And what I'd said was, "Excuse me, sir, I'm hot. Can you take off your pants?" Because it turns out debuka is open, take off, exit, remove. There's only one word for all of that. And I was saying pants, anyway, it was all very amusing. So I learnt the power of communication fairly quickly. Communication between farmers, pastorals, businesses, consultants, the Department of Agriculture is fundamentally going to underpin the success of our industry. It really frustrates me when I hear people say, oh, I don't want to deal with the department, I don't want to deal with a certain consultant, we can do it all ourselves. And I think that everybody in agriculture has a role to play. How we pull the most out of those different bits is through communication. What resources have we got? What needs have we got? What resources have you got? What needs have you got? What skills have you got? Okay, cool. So now how can we pull it together to make a really efficient system? That is all about communication. Particularly from my experience with the KPCA, the Department of Agriculture and Rangelands NRM have given us the funds. Now, what we have given them is access to the people to actually create the change that we're all trying to achieve. So I personally think that public-private partnerships are a really important part of how we're going to manage things going forward. We live in a really rapidly changing world. So raise your hand if you've got a smartphone. Yeah. So those things were developed in 2007. That was 9 years ago. I now run my entire life on it. In fact, if I haven't done a workout and it hasn't recorded, it doesn't count. Like, I feel really bad that no one's going to, tell me how wonderful I am because I waddled 2 kilometres or whatever I do. But basically what that smartphone has done is it's taken us from mass communication to masses of communicators. So that poses us with some opportunities, but it also poses us with some risks. Now, what I mean by that is the food conversation is happening whether we like it or not. Now, if farmers and people involved in agriculture are not filling that space of that negative, agricultural agenda, then it's being filled by people that are from outside the industry that are not potentially very helpful. So I guess, has anyone heard of the term social licence? A few of you? Yeah, okay. So a social licence basically means that people, the consumer, the general public, is happy for you to keep doing what you're doing. They actually, if they're not happy, have the power to stop it. And we've seen it with the live export industry. Last month we saw it with the dogs, the dog racing in New South Wales. And yet people still say to me, oh yeah, but they can't stop us. We just keep doing what we're doing on our farm. Now the reality of it is it's happening all the time around us. So we have to step up. We have to communicate about the way that we're caring for animals, the way that we're caring for the environment, things that the consumer cares about. Because whether we like it or not, we need consumers' support. We need them to let us do what we're doing. We need them to not understand everything that we're doing. It irritates me when people say, yeah, but they need to know how we produce food. No, they don't. Do you know how roads are built? Do you even think twice about it? Absolutely not. So what we need to do is show that we care, and then people are actually happy to leave us to it. I'm just going to skip a bit because we're short on time. One of the things with communication is, whether we like it or not, the language that we use creates perceptions. So I was delivering a workshop in Bega a couple of years ago, and a lady said to me, we were talking about different experiences at the supermarket, and I said to her, she said, oh, I've had an experience recently. And what happened was, she was a dairy farmer in Bega, and she watched somebody at the supermarket buying cheese. And this woman picked up a whole heap of different cheeses and then picked a New Zealand cheese. And so Deb went up to this lady and said, I hope you don't mind me asking, but why did you do that? Like, was it the price or what was it? And she said, I'll never buy Australian cheese because all Australian farmers do is whinge and bitch about how bloody tough it is, and I'm sick of hearing it. Now, whether we like that or not, it's actually true to that person, and it is changing her buying habits. So how can we use language to actually be proactive, be positive about our industry, show that we care, to actually stimulate people to feel good about buying Australian produce again? Just one other simple story about changing your words. I used to get my hair cut in Freo. You all know where Freo is. And I'd talk as loud as I possibly could about the work I was doing in the East Asian beef industry. I was helping local farmers with their animal welfare, improving their nutrition. I was helping the women with giving them jobs so that they could have a double income in their family, looking after the baby calves and everything. Everyone was so excited. They're like, that's such a cool job. You must hate the live trade. I'm like, that's actually the industry I work in. Now, if I had said at the start, I work in the live export industry, how far do you think I would have got in a hairdresser in Fremantle? The use of language is so important. So communication is my first thing with leadership. The second one is authenticity. You have to be yourself. If you're not being yourself, people are not going to trust you. They don't know who you are. You're pretending to be someone else. And people trusting you is the biggest thing in collaboration, in actually getting people to work with you. Everyone has different strengths, and it's about identifying that and celebrating it and being authentic so that you can find other groups that have different strengths and work with them. Being authentic also leads itself a little bit to vulnerability. Now work with me here. Vulnerability can be quite scary, but it can also be a beautiful thing. Because when you acknowledge what you're not good at, you create a space for someone else who is good at that, so to actually step up and help you, so you get a better outcome. So instead of trying to be tough all the time and pretending that you're awesome at everything, if you can acknowledge your vulnerabilities, it's a trick that I use in leadership a lot. You recognise your vulnerabilities to start with. You then say, hang on, you're good. Like, I've got a shocking attention to detail. I'm going to tell you that right now. So what I do is, instead of getting cross with people that are like, but you haven't got that right, you haven't got that right, I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to give you that job because you're much better at it. So if by acknowledging my vulnerabilities, by being courageous enough to acknowledge that by being authentic enough to acknowledge that I don't have all the answers, I've actually made someone's day, I've empowered someone, they feel good about themselves, and guess what? They're going to work harder for me because they actually feel valued. So by being authentic, by acknowledging your vulnerabilities, you are then able to actually build people around you to get a better outcome. Networking is my final one, so communication, authenticity and networking. And it's the most powerful skill you can have. It ultimately is also called collaboration, strangely enough. And it's about recognising the capacity of your networks. The KPCA is a great example of networking. So basically a whole heap of producers got together and said, hey, we're sick of being individualistic, we really need to move forward, we want to collaborate, we want to connect, we want to work together. They then started having conversations with the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Water. They were questioning, communicating. Now, out of that has come a $15 million project for Northern Australia. So that is a fantastic outcome for people going, hey, let's see who else is here. Let's see what else we can do. Let's see what we can share. Have we all got an ultimate goal together? Can we develop a project together using different people's experiences and whatnot to actually create something that is better? Now, with that opportunity, we need people, we need recognised skills, we need drive, energy, passion, you need effective communication, and you need to work together to make it happen. One person, one department, one organisation can't make something like that happen. It takes people working together. It takes utilising your networks, and it takes courage to actually acknowledge, hey, I need help here, and there's a network of people that I think can help me, and letting go of all of that to utilise the networks. It's all very good to say, you know, I know so-and-so and I know so-and-so. That's great, but what are you actually utilising them for? What are you offering them as well in return? Networking's not just a one-way thing. You've got to be able to give a little as well. Many heads will always be better than one. So remember that in life you can be what you want to be, you can create the change that you want to create, and you can lead this planet into a better, more vibrant, sustainable way. I believe that it's the people that I have met that have given me my I can do attitude, and with a little collaboration, communication, authenticity and networking, you will not only predict your future, you will create it. Thank you.